Um, Hi, my name is Mike Sharman, and I'm the founder of Retroviral, the agency that has made more brands go globally viral than any other agency in Africa, as well as a co-founder on the influencer marketing platform Webfluential.com, as well as the sports storytelling agency Retroactive, which has most recently been launched 18 months ago.
Really interested in knowing, and maybe this has changed over the years, or obviously it probably has, but what is your definition of success?
My definition of success is something that my uncle actually told me. He and my aunt were entrepreneurs, and I used to spend a lot of time on my summer holidays here working in the States for them and really being exposed to their wealth of entrepreneurial knowledge and terrors and realities. And my uncle always used to say that for him, success was the ability to be able to go anywhere, anytime he wanted. So to give that into some context, he pretty much could pick up the phone or go online at the time and book a flight and go anywhere in the world. And I think it's such a simple concept, but success is really determined by what your own view of it is. Like, success doesn't really have a one size fits all cap to it. It's something that success is based on a feeling, and I don't think success is ever completed. So I don't think it's a linear type of journey. I think that when you've achieved a degree of success, I think that you want to go on to create more and more, and it unlocks the potential for you to realize that the value you've learned from one successful engagement can lead on to almost like stepping stones to other greatness and additional success.
I like that. That's actually really resonates with me. My one-liner that I used to use was, in terms of definition of success, is just to have control over my own time. And that's
Yeah,
basically what I wanted.
nailed it.
And then you can go as far back as you want, but just sort of your toughest work experience to date. So whether it's with the startups that you've started or even pre-agency life, any sort of background that stuck with you in terms of your toughest work experience?
Toughness for me pertains really to the relationships of people that you work with. So the stuff that's always a highlight of negativity is when you don't have partners that you've worked with, where the clients have treated you like a master slave kind of relationship, where it hasn't felt like you're there for kind of the synergistic gain of both parties. And for me, in 2010, when I launched Retroviral, I was armed robbed within the first 3 months of starting my business. Had my cell phone taken out of my pocket, I was tied up with my shoelaces, and I had my MacBook stolen in that armed robbery. And it was both the frightening ordeal as well as a real hamstrung moment in terms of having the entry level elements of my business just completely removed and extracted. So that was when we think about toughness and mental toughness and the associated struggles thereof, that for me was terrifying yet a defining moment in terms of my own personal growth and development.
Okay, great. Well, now my next question was actually, how did you decide to start Retroviral? So we also interesting to know how you actually pulled through during that experience, because I think a lot of people, or some that might feel that they're victim or things always go wrong, there's obviously two routes to take. You took the right route and stayed positive. So I think, how did Retroviral come about?
I had this weird kind of desire to want to be an actor. So that was one of the early thoughts. So after I ended up going to varsity and doing a marketing degree, just because my parents were like, no, you don't want to be an actor. You'll never have a bond, or you'll never be able to have medical aid. It's like the white parents' number one fears for their children. And so I went and did a 3-year degree in marketing, and once I was completed with that, I said to my folks, cool, I finished it. I got the paperwork, and I always used to go and work in the States for my aunt and uncle, and the money that I'd saved from that, I then said, cool, I'm going to go to acting school in Hollywood. So I found a school online, I applied, and I went and moved to the States for 6 months so that I would never have one of those future past self-regret moments. Went and did acting school, learned how to do stand-up comedy, wrote some script stuff, and sat at a Starbucks and wrote a one-man show around growing up, being the Lart Lamaki in a family, having a dad who was a pilot, having sisters that were 15 and 17 years older than me, and just all the kind of various idiosyncrasies that come with that. Always been obsessed with storytelling, playing with accents, watching TV, and then trying to impersonate the characters, retell the songs of those different shows that we grew up to, like Gummy Bears and Captain Planet and all these things. I've always been like kind of quite interested in the mimic side of things. And then for 2006 and some of 2007, I pretty much spent all that time on creating my play and performing it, which was my first startup. And that required budgeting and production and advertising and marketing, in the sense of like creating posters and encouraging people to come and see the show. And then all the profits from the first run at Wits then allowed us to take the show down to Grahamstown, and then ran a 10-day in a row performance there, and had to convince people in Grahamstown to come and see the show and hand out the flyers. And, you know, it was really like a humbling experience. I had been a telemarketer at Varsity as one of my jobs, so I'd learned to grow a thick skin very quickly in terms of the rejection space and being told no or to F off. And then in 2007, after the play, a friend of mine who was a few years older, she'd launched a PR agency, and then she asked if I wanted to come and interview for a job there, because they were looking to hire their first employee, and they'd won the Virgin Money account with Richard Branson, and they had MasterCard and Epson and a few other fintech brands on their books. And I became an account executive working for them. And the thing they taught me about was real strategy and really understanding the insights of a consumer, a target market, the who, what, where, when, so that you could then implement the how of the tactics. And for me, that was really fascinating, because I kind of got sucked into the bug of converting your stories into coverage for clients and using storytelling as an opportunity to really bring those elements to life. And in 2007, at the end of the year, I went to a cricket match to go and win the fancy dress competition in Kingsmead, dressed up like Borat. And I went onto the field and I had to answer some questions. And I won tickets for me and my best mate to go to London. So we moved over to London in 2008 and did everything from silver service at the Royal Albert Hall, serve people champagne, did spit braais for an Afrikaans Inyama catering business, where we used to go and make hog roasts and lamb roasts and militart and all these other South African delicacies for British people. And eventually landed a job in PR in London, PRing startups. Didn't know much about startups and entrepreneurship at the time, but I just combined the uniqueness and the simplicity of storytelling, as well as uncovering these individuals' hero journeys, so that we could then sell their story to the media. And because I'd worked in PR in South Africa, I knew the kind of sales pitch process. The most important thing for me was to uncover who the network of influential journalists and media was, so that I could then make mates with them and then convince them to tell my clients' stories. Got onto Twitter in 2008 and started following journalists and influencers and individuals that I felt were really interesting on the space, and just started experimenting, was blogging and checking out analytics. And I was basically using all of my self-taught theses to then go and plug that into client updates, client know-how, thought leadership. And for me, like, I've always been really creative. I did art till matric and loved drawing and pastels and all that kind of stuff. And for me, I'd never been a formal graphic designer, but there was just something about being able to unlock both the left and right side of my brain, so that I could almost project manage certain executions. There was a platform that I was consulting on as part of Symbian. Symbian was the biggest operating system in the world before Apple came along with iOS, and obviously Google with Android. And at the time, every major cell phone manufacturer had Symbian as its operating system. And I was the project manager on a project that looked at redefining their business, the community that they had, where people could vote up and down on any changes. For example, if your screensaver could flash and it could have multimedia elements, people could vote up or vote down whether that is an important thing to be rolled out into the operating system. The problem was that they became too community driven and stopped taking decisions as a business and as a product. and then relied too much on the community that they ended up not seeing the challenges coming through from Apple and Android. And nowadays Symbian is just a shell of its former self. And at that time, I really started thinking about, like, I know enough tech know-how, I'm creative enough, and I'm obviously structured enough to be able to be someone that can offer a 360 view when it comes to projects in the digital space. And there wasn't anyone else that I could be mentored from within the agency that I was working. I was 26 years old. I then went back to Starbucks, as I would, in terms of like doodling and drawing on napkins and that kind of thing. And I developed this whole Holy Trinity of marketing approach, which is something that I still always revert back to today. And the Holy Trinity of marketing is digital, PR, and activation. And digital, you have this barrier like you and I have now. We have like this humanity barrier where I can't process the nonverbal cues that I would if we were in each other's space, if I was vibing off your energy. So digital gives you almost like a very superficial layer that protects us from connecting properly as human beings. PR can only tell a remarkable story if it's got the insights from a human lens associated with it. And then activation can only really be impactful if it ties into both storytelling and creative, and the storytelling layer that comes with it. So, the more digital savvy we become, the more we crave human interaction. So there's a certain layer that you can get to in digital, but in the real world, that's how you can move from a rational to an emotional connection with a customer. So if we put digital, PR, and activation all together, that's what I started out wanting to build. And Retroviral for me was something where so many fly-by-nights were launching because people had a Twitter account and they were selling and peddling jargon as a way to convince clients to work with them. But because I actually had a marketing degree and I had some kind of inkling around the real strengths of strategy because of those PR days, I went out with the offering that, here we offer the retro side of communication that is grounded in structure and strategy. And in order to go viral, you have to connect remarkable content with the right people to get those results. And in 2010, went on a bit of a backpack through Thailand, India, Japan, and China, spent 2 months on the road, and then came back to South Africa and launched this thing that I didn't even know what it was. I had no business plan, because for me, I'm a fan of launching stuff and letting your customer engagement and your customer feedback define what your business model and your approach is. And here we are almost 10 years later, and what a ride.
Gosh, now I understand why you guys have won so many awards. That's quite a mouthful. And I think that's also amazing to see as well, the amount of experience that you've gained overseas. You definitely came to South Africa way ahead of the game. And it's awesome to see the work that you guys do. I actually wanted to know, what are the 3 sort of principles you believe led to the success of your company?
The 3 principles that led to the success of my company, I think it's sheer bloody mindedness and the ability to never take no as the final answer. I think the other thing is really having a really good team around me, small, nimble group of people, and they've all managed to bring their own misfit alignment into this greater vision. And we are all different. We are all interesting characters. We do challenge one another. There are the extroverts and the introverts. But the important thing is almost like that idea of giving my brand a personality. That personality has been adopted by the staff. And when we approach clients and potential clients, for me, I'm very straight up and honest with them that we are perfectly suitable to challenger brands, because we take risks, we are brave, and we're going to do things that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable in your tummy. And if it doesn't make you feel uncomfortable in your tummy, then why are we doing it? So for me, those are really important tenets of what we do. And if I'm not excited to my bones and my guts about it, if I'm not going to sweat for it myself, then, the risk isn't worth the reward.
Yes. Okay. Failure is it's got such a negative perception, and I don't often like using the word, but is there anything in sort of your career to date that you feel has been your biggest failure that you've learned from, or any mistakes? Or
Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple mistakes. Fortunately, the failures are limited, because we've had more upside than downside. And I think the reason why we've stayed in business for so long and being able to morph and evolve. And also for us, we are chasing trends and we are trying to stay ahead of the pack. So at times you are involved in things that we try and create tomorrow what didn't exist today. And that's quite a difficult thing, where you are trying to stay ahead of your competitors all the time. Because to your point earlier, you spoke about your involvement in influencer marketing before it even had a name. And so many of the larger agencies or mid-sizes have gone and launched competitor products, divisions, etc., to try and compete with that. So for us, we always looked at ways in which we could almost make parts of our business redundant so that we could move on to things that then unlocked more budgets and more opportunities. So for me, failure came in a few shapes, mainly when we worked with smaller businesses as SMEs or any other potential friendship circle linked partnerships. Because the problem is when you're working with SMEs, is that the money becomes too personally connected to that individual. They don't treat it as a budget, they treat it as their own cash. And as soon as you're working with clients that can't make the distinction between those two things, you're setting yourself up for failure from the beginning, because it's almost like you have to be willing to risk that cash for the upside. And for me, a failure quote that I always subscribe to, which Melissa Attry taught me back in 2009 when we first met on Skype when I was still in London, is that don't let fears of financial failure cripple you. Because the one thing that money does, it creates paralysis, and it really stops you from unlocking the creative opportunities that you have. So for me, I'm anti working with entrepreneurs and startups in very early stage businesses, because the connection between the cash is too emotionally connected and it's not rationally driven.
It's really well put. I can think of a few cases where I've experienced that myself with clients. And when all of this, when COVID-19 hit and the lockdown and the news, and you had to obviously re-strategize or take action, what did you guys immediately do in terms of communicating to your team, and what sort of approach did you guys take?
So yeah, I mean, we are very WhatsApp driven in terms of our immediacy from a comms perspective, both as an internal team and also with our clients. So for me, having seen the first speech, the one about going into the social distancing space before the second lockdown speech, from a social distancing perspective, went onto WhatsApp and just said to the team, listen, we're going to have a chat tomorrow morning in our Monday status, just digesting this and doing a bit of reading in terms of where we're at and what the implications are for us as a business. Very fortunate as a business. Majority of our clients are retainer based. Yes, they are under pressure. Yes, some of them are going to experience budget cuts. That's the reality of this new normal that we're in. But the ability to be able to stop, take action, read, and have a look at what is happening in the external kind of macro world, and then to approach Monday morning with a very specific plan. Hey, we're having our Monday status. This is the thinking. This is the process. Where you guys are at mentally. We are very fortunate because we've been running off the G Suite for the last 5 or 6 years. So everything of us is Gmail driven, Gmail orientated. We have all of our content and work saved on a Google Drive. So with your Retroviral logins, you can get access to this entire ecosystem. So for us making the decision on that, I think it was the 16th of March, guys, end of day, we're out of here and we're working from home for the foreseeable future. Boom. We actioned that, and then from the Tuesday, the 17th of March, we've been working remotely. And what has been interesting is that, you know, we've had to go out and pitch during these times. We've had to go and try and find new business. And I think the quickness to adapt to that and the ability to just be nimble enough has forever been in our favor. And we have morning power sessions with the team at about 8:15. Not everyone dials in all the time. I'm not in on all of those sessions, but I try to just show face and dial in whenever I can. But I'm fortunate because I have a really strong team and people who, I like to hire people who take responsibility for their own stuff and to take responsibility for their actions. So we have more traditional structures now than we ever have. So we have client we have creative directors, and we have account directors and account managers and designers and community managers and that kind of thing, finance. But we have the ability to action what we need to do and to keep each other in the loop via WhatsApp, email, or Skype. or hangouts. And I think the ability for us to be so calm about that has then led to the infectiousness of calmness into our clients and into the people that we work with or engage with, so that they can see, listen, we've got this. And it's not just lip service. It's like, we are calm with this because we know that it's a temporary measure, and we'll do our absolute best in these times that we can.
The benefits of being so digitally jacked like you guys. I mean, you've again ahead of the game. I know so many of my mates who had never had a Zoom call before this happened, and how time consuming.
We see with a lot of people that we engage with, it's like, hello, why can't you hear me? You're on mute. So it's Are you Marissa? Are you on the call?
Yeah.
You know that part, that's Marissa on the bottom. That means that Marissa is on most definitely on the call. Yes, Marissa is on the call.
I can't even act like I knew what was going on. And my first Zoom session was when I tuned into a Pilates session and I didn't know my mic was automatically on, and I was just chatting. Yeah, it could have been a lot worse. And thankfully, it was a mate of mine giving the class, and she just said, "Have you ever joined now?" And I was 10 minutes late, so not very nice.
10 minutes, you were rocking the silent downward dog, and you didn't even know what was going on.
Yeah. So yeah, it could have been a lot worse. And then just a few more questions, but to move on to your book. I have got that PDF in my inbox, and to be honest with you, I'm so
But the best inbox.
Yeah. I'm glued to my phone and my screen, and all I want to do is physically go through a book. So needless to say, I'm definitely, and I'm not busy licking ass, although this is very PR of me, but I'm going to go buy the book once I can. So I haven't fully committed to reading it yet, but if you can just give
I'll send you a copy.
Okay.
Just let me know.
Thanks. If you can give me a brief introduction and just tell me why you believe people should read your book.
The book is almost 3 years old now, so it's not fresh, but I still think that there are a lot of insights and a lot of lessons from experience being a challenger. And so many of your readers, listeners have to be challengers in this space. They have to adopt a challenger mentality, whether it be those in corporate or those in startup. And for me, I had this saying back in the day during conferences and at marketing events, that we never want to be the biggest, we want to be the best. And it was all around, just around the style of agency that I wanted to build. Never wanted to have 100-person agency, never wanted to be the biggest. And for me, because of my challenger approach to the status quo and me not being a traditional ad guy, I said a lot of stuff that didn't necessarily conform to what other agencies were saying. So for me, I was happy to own the fact that I came across as a bit of a dick. At the same time, there were also like a lot of dicks in digital. It was very much like a, boys club, and everyone was trying to blow their own horn. So my whole thing and my whole view on that, which I went out publicly with to say at a lot of these events, was I don't want to be the biggest dick. I want to be the best dick. And that's where, and also just to caveat that, it is gender agnostic. So being a best dick is not limited to being a man. I mean, You can be the best dick of your industry. Stream can be the best dick of podcasting, if that's something that you want to create. So for me, I'm actually busy working on my next book called Brandalism, and that is set to drop in hopefully August or September. I've got a few thousand more words still to write. But for me, Brandalism is almost like the evolution of that, where you have to look at deconstructing the status quo as a brand or as an individual so that you can move forward in this new world. I started researching it and started writing it before lockdown, but I think it's going to be even more pertinent now than ever for us to look at deconstructing the ways in which we did stuff in the old world. And we've seen it now with a lot of brands, like some of them have started playing with their slogans. They've defaced their logos. Some brands for the benefit of themselves, others to the benefit of the trolls on social. McDonald's went with the social distancing of their golden arches in Brazil, and they got lambasted for just being wanky, arty creatives who are trying to win an award. Where brands like MTN has become everywhere you stay, and Vodacom on our phones here says, stay safe at the top here. So Yeah, I think that for me is the most exciting work that I'm involved in. The best stick was kind of like it comes across as a little bit juvenile when I look back in retrospect, but it was great from a PR opportunity. Got me a lot of interviews. It got me onto some of the best business shows. So as a fan of PR and strategy, you'd appreciate all of the work that actually did for me as a personal brand and for my small business to grow. And yeah, I mean, it really is, it's to help entrepreneurs from any industry, not just ad industry land, to see that there are commonalities in terms of the premises that you're exposed to as a business owner. So whether it be hiring your first employee or firing, networking, marketing, finding your 4Ps, which became 6Ps, then became an unlimited Ps based on the time from me going through varsity to where we are today. But understanding all of these different touch points are things. Cash flow is the number one killer of all small business. You know, all these things, there's like similarities between starting an engineering firm or starting an ad agency and growing these things and scaling them accordingly. So the benefit for me and the best deck has been that it's really helped me jot down all of those thoughts to help other entrepreneurs read and say, oh, wow, if I look at all of these things and I start mastering each of these different silos and realizing that them together will enable me to become a better entrepreneur or a best entrepreneur of my sector. And that's something that I'm really proud of, is the fact that it wasn't built to make sales and make me J.K. Rowling rich. It was meant to educate and inform other people. And yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I put out on LinkedIn, I'll give away a free PDF of the thing because I feel like my journey with that piece of literature is done. And oh shit, I can't keep up with the LinkedIn inboxes and the approaches, which has then led to another new business format, finding interesting new people who I can connect with who want to read my book. I've had about 26,000 reach on that LinkedIn post that I put out organically. And I've sent out personally, not even using like email software, because I try to make it like a very personalized approach and very immediate. I've sent out about 350, 400 emails individually over the last 10 days.
How the heck do you find the time to do all of this and everything else that you're doing? I don't know. Do you have switch off time from like screens and computers, or time like during the day, or do you just go full on during this time especially?
I have toddlers, so there's bath time and there's 5 minutes of giving them my attention, which isn't enough. I could always do more. But for me, when I sleep very hard. So I try and switch off at some stage. At the moment, there's no switch off because COVID lockdown means like every second wasted is another opportunity lost. And I'm just back in this real like startup phase, thinking of like, what can we keep hustling with? We also plan to launch a sports product for athletes, a digital product to help athletes enhance their personal brands. And this was something that we had the idea in January, registered the domain on the 30th of Jan, and we're going to launch this thing publicly at the end of the month, next month. So here we've gone and we've basically built an entire product in less than 4 months to go to market. And for me, I'm just going to give it a crack and see what it does.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear more about it when it launches and to check it out. I also feel the same. I feel like for the first time in ages, I've got that rush that I did when I was like 25 years old, and I was like, ooh, my own agency, and started like 4 years behind.
I'm a business owner. I have my own business cards.
Yeah, exactly. And behind my computer 24/7. But now I'm getting to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, if this lockdown lifts, I haven't done one meditation. I haven't done one like proper yoga class. Like, where's all my Eckhart Tolle teachings? Just
exactly. Brené Brown's going to be very disappointed.
Yeah. And then any sort of advice that you'd give to someone who might have lost their job during this time, or to people who, because I know personally I've got so many mates who are now trying to make most of this opportunity and to start their own business. So any sort of advice that you'd give, aside from the fact that they have to read your book and look up for your next one coming out, any advice that you'd give?
You know, I was at an event the other day and Pepe Marais from Joe Public was also speaking, and he had a great line that he said. It was, you know, almost always the worst thing that can happen is simultaneously the best thing. And I'm really sorry if you've lost your job at the moment. I'm really sorry if your industry's been decimated. And it's one of those spaces where you want to say, screw the world. You want to put your hands up, lie on the back of your shell like a tortoise, and you want to play the victim. And that's understandable. Like, it really is. The only thing that's different about this instance is that we've all gone through this. We've all experienced some sort of loss, and we're all dealing with a form of metaphysical or formal kind of grief at some stage. But the reality is that life will go on. The sun will rise tomorrow. We'll continue to do our thing, and you will find opportunities. If you can just take a step back and stop obsessing about the money part and the finances part and where the bucks is going to come from, like, that will open your mind up to that creative aspect of creative problem solving, whether you're an accountant, a doctor, a lawyer, or an ad person. And if you can take the opportunity to really just read stuff, listen to podcasts, engage with content, that's the space that I go to try and be inspired. Listening to so many different business podcasts of businesses that started from nothing and ended up scaling to enormous heights. And everything will get better. Like, it just depends how much hustle and how much grit you're willing to put into it. You know, if you can take time to binge watch a new series on Netflix or Showmax, or if you can spend time reading an entire new collection of books, like, what about thinking about your future, and what about thinking about taking the next step? And for me, the ultimate line is always, life is short, play naked.
Ending off with 3 things that you've achieved that you feel meets your requirements of achieving success.
For me, I feel like I said earlier that success isn't binary. So it's not like on and off, or a 0 and a 1. I think that success is something where you're constantly evolving and you're constantly giving back until the last breath you take. And for me, success is not just about creating your own value for your own self. I believe in almost like wealth creation capitalism, where you create wealth for others, whether it be educational wealth or whether it be from them leaving your own business and your own space to then spin out and start their own thing that ends up becoming valuable. So I think that would probably be the most important aspects of the way in which we do stuff. I also feel like success is when you can actually give back, whether it be supporting a charity or helping a foundation or starting a foundation, so that these things can then feed each other, that the capitalism can feed the social welfare aspect. And yeah, I think that there's always room for improvement. Like, I don't think that I'm ever finished, and I hope I never will be. And for me, I don't look to wanting to be 40 and retire, because I think I'd drive myself mental. So I want to go and just continue to grow and spiritually enlighten myself and help other people unlock their wealth on their journey.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So no sabbatical anytime soon.
Sure. No, I get too bored.
Cool. Thank you so much. Those are all the questions. I really, really appreciate your time, and keep producing the amazing work. I can't wait to particularly hear about the sports app, or the sports business you guys are starting. It sounds really cool.
You'll hear it first. You'll be on the early bird news list.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, and have a good day on that side.
Well, thanks for having me. Look forward to it. So Good luck with all your.
Cool. Thank you so much. Cheers. And I'll let you know once I'm in Gauteng.
Yeah, do it when you can drive across the borders.
Exactly. Cheers.